Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Movies and TVs on the Ball. My name is Steve.
And I'm Jay.
And today, we just got out of a special midnight screening, let's say, of X2. This is going to be part 2 of our X-Men video that we did in honor of X-Men 97. It was kind of, I guess we just went to an event where we got to see the screenwriter.
Yeah, one of the main writers for the X-Men animated series.
X-Men animated series doing a video, or doing a Q&A. So it was kind of nice to see it. But since X-Men 97 came out, we decided let's talk about X2 on for the second episode. So Jay, what'd you think of X2 when you first saw it?
I guess I remember sort of being a little bit, shocked because they actually showing Wolverine, stabbing people and stuff. So, they sort of upped the violence a bit from the first one.
Yeah.
And I like sort of the more darker tones. There's a lot more at stake.
And I felt like they need to amplify the ante pretty much, because I think also Spider-Man came out like a year after, right before this one. So okay. I felt like, in some ways that, but X2 has one of the best openings sequences. So what we get in X2 is the opening sequence is the president's about to is doing his daily work, and it did kind of resemble Bush a little bit, didn't it? Kind of resemble. I mean, not or the look, or she just looked like a normal president, or like not a normal, or just kind of president,
like an old white guy.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, he's basically starting his day, and there's a tour going around, and I like what they did with the tour. Is that they talked about I guess it was Thomas Jefferson. We are not enemies, we are friends.
I can't remember.
Or it was a speech. I think it was a speech of Thomas Jefferson, and I think it was his inauguration speech. And then we see a portrait of JFK, and see a man standing there, so that basically starts where we get to the introduction to Nightcrawler. But right. I like how they kind of sneak it in,
right? Because
what we see in Nightcrawler is basically a guy, and you hear him go, poof, poof, and it's kind of mysterious. And then they see him sort of standing there, or the security guard or the secret agents see him standing there and go, "Sir, what are you doing? You need to go back to the group." And then you find out he's got a tail, and it's Nightcrawler. Right. And then Nightcrawler goes from point A to point B to point C, and it's a great scene. He's actually kicked some people in the escaping or doing his thing. So Jay, what'd you think of that? Because
that was a great, it sort of reminds you like the Matrix a bit, except it doesn't really have the slow motion scenes, but just.
But it works. It works in its own style. I think it works its own style. Now, what was interesting is I did I watched some of the behind the scenes stuff, and there's the X-Men2 comic, and in the X-Men2 comic, there's a little bit more backstory on how Nightcrawler gets to the
White House.
The White House, because what happens is Nightcrawler is in a circus and gets confronted by Stryker, and Stryker basically manipulates him with the serum, mind control stuff, and he does this whole, and that's how he gets. That's how Nightcrawler gets to the president. And so he does all this stuff, and it's a pretty cool scene. He gets all the way up to the president with a letter opener, and I like how he gets on him, and he basically takes his tail and takes one of the letter openers out, and he's about to hit him, and he gets shot, or he looks like he gets shot, but he poofs back out. And there's a it misses the president's head, and it's next to, it says free mutant rights now.
Right.
So I think it has a really interesting, different thing. And then we fast forward or go to a museum where they are, where they're looking at animal or kind of animals, and they talk about the Neanderthals.
Right.
And I like, there was this kid, there's this little girl, she's eating ice cream. And as she's eating ice cream, she sticks her tongue out.
Right.
And then there's this kid, he sticks his tongue out, and he's got kind of this like purple tongue looking thing. I thought that was a kind of nice hand. And we kind of see them kind of be, it's kind of like they're on a field trip.
Yeah, I think they're on a field trip, to the museum.
To the museum. And there's like I don't know, in this museum, there's a courtroom, not a courtroom, food court.
Right.
And we finally we're kind of introduced to Pyro, because he's in the
first one.
He's in the first one, but this is where we get more. He's got more of a depth or character, because in the first one, he shows up and does sort of like a fireball, and Iceman kind of changes it from a fireball to an ice ball, and that was kind of our first introduction to Pyro. But this one, he's a little bit more slicker. He's kind of got an attitude, and these two kids are like going, give us back our light. And he says, and he like turns it on and goes, nah. And then he basically takes the light, and they get an kind of a scuffle, and the boys steal his lighter and use it to smoke a cigarette.
Right.
But they kind of have like it's kind of like a PA message, where he's like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. And he smokes and he lights, and the way he winks, Pyro winks, and that lights the fire and catches on fire. And then he turns into fire and turns into fire, or doesn't turn into fire, but he gets flamed on, and the Iceman has to kind of save him. And there's like he's panicking,
right.
And then all of a sudden he turns to ice, or
no, Professor Xavier does his
time stop thing.
Right. Which,
did he do that in the first one?
No,
so he does the time stop thing, and everybody just freezes, literally.
Right.
And what I kind of thought, I was like, when I was watching, I was like going, oh, that's a cool shot. And I'm thinking, how are those extras standing there so still, And then, and Professor Xavier shows up and says, next time you show off, don't. Next time when you feel like showing off, don't.
Right.
And then we get to know about the president's assassination attempt. And then we're introduced to William Stryker, played by Brian Cox. You know Brian Cox from such films as The Bourne Supremacy and Ultimatum. He was in The Rookie. He played the dad of Dennis Quaid, but that's pretty much where you know him. He plays William Stryker. Now, William Stryker, I did some research into the character. He is in the comics, and I think in the comics he was a minister who kind of one of those real Baptist ministers that kind of talked about, mutants are the disgrace of all, mankind. But this one, he is a liaison to the president.
I think he's like a general.
He's a general. And I think he shows up again in X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Okay.
As a younger version.
Right.
And I think he's also in Days of Future Past as well. But he's kind of older, and we see that he's looking at the mark that the letter opener made, and he's talking about what are you, I have this proposal that you should check this out, that that there's a school up in New York that there's
mutants there.
That are mutants there. Thank you. And he's like, and he's looking at these photos. The president's looking at these photos, and as the president is looking at these photos, he says, what is that? And he sees a jet, and he says, oh, that's their jet. It comes out of there. And Brian Cox, or Stryker, says, that's the jet that comes out of their basketball court.
Right.
And he says, and then the president basically says, you can detain, you can go in there and look around, but the last thing we need is another mutant's body, mutant kids dead on the 6 o'clock news. So I like how he walks out, and then we see Senator Kelly's back from the dead. Mystique. But it's Mystique, and he's like going, and Mystique and Senator Kelly says, we are going to, or Senator Kelly, what's...
Well, I guess Senator Kelly, main thing, is talks with Stryker, and she finds out Stryker knows where they're holding Magneto.
And I like what Stryker says is like going, don't you want this? You don't want this to be a kind of war. And Stryker says, this is already a war. Right. I was in Nam dealing with, Vietnam War, and while you were, when you were with your mom at Woodstock. And I think that he's also dealt with this before. It's not, it's nothing, it's nothing. This is a bigger thing than we can, bigger. What am I trying to say? It's a bigger thing than just Nam.
Crazy.
Yeah, he is sort of. Yeah. What'd you think of? Did you know anything about him?
Before this, no.
Or okay, Stryker. I mean, I did a little research, and that was the only thing I kind of found, that he was one of those. I think he's a little bit more of like a preacher in the comic. Because I think this is based on a comic called God Loves, Man Kills. Okay. Which is, I think, a comic based on that. And so we find out that Senator Kelly, if you've seen the first one, he's already dead. And it's Mystique because of her eyes. And then we go to the school. And Xavier, Wolverine, who was at Alkali Lake at the beginning of the movie, has showed up. Right. And he
sort of shows up, and then everyone else leaves to go get Nightcrawler, and then Professor X leaves to go see Magneto.
And the thing I liked but I did like the fact that you can, I think Iceman, I was going to go with Iceman, kind of looks at, gets a little bit jealous because there's a scene where Iceman looks at Rogue, and they're in a relationship, and then when Wolverine shows up, because of their friendship, he gets a little jealous. But so he's babysitting the kids. What'd you think of the scene in the Cerebro, where he says, Logan, my tolerance for you to smoke in the mansion, if you do it in the Cerebro, I will make you feel like a 6-year-old girl. I'll even have Jean. I'll make you believe you're a 6-year-old girl, and Jean can braid your hair.
That's a pretty good joke.
You can do that. And then I like how he takes the cigar and burns it into his hand and takes it out, and you can see it heals up again. Yeah. And that's a pretty cool nod. So then we get to see kind of how Cerebro works, more in detail in this one than we did in the first one. Because he talks about how these white lights all depict human humanity and all the red lights.
I think they just show us like the different colors this scene so they can explain it towards the end. Reason
and I like how, and there's a crease, and it's Nightcrawler, and he says
teleporting around.
And he says to Logan or Professor X says to Jean and Storm to go and get him.
Right.
So I liked this. I mean, I liked and so they end up going to get him, and they stop into a church. They pass along the way, and we see that Storm and Jean find him, and Jean kind of says that's the reason why he can't find Professor X couldn't find Nightcrawler, he's a teleporter.
Right.
And it's a nice scene because he speaks in German, which Nightcrawler is in the film, in the comics, and I liked how Nightcrawler, was kind of demon looking, kind of in the same way. I mean, he wasn't demon. I mean, how do you make him? I think if he had too much fur, I like his look. I mean, what's your thoughts on look?
I like his look too. Yeah. Sort of blue skin with sort of
tattoos, and he says in a later scene, he says, "These tattoos are for every sin that I've done," and I liked what they did with the religion of Christianity. What does the salvation and that kind of.
It just makes it sadder that he was mind controlled to kill all those people.
Yeah. Well, because we see in the back that he's got looks like a bullet
Stryker
hole.
had mind controlled him.
Mind controlled him. So anyway, they talk about, these angelic symbols, and he's like, maybe he's testing. I like that kind of stuff they talked about.
Right.
And I was very much interested in. What was your thoughts on the look? I was really interested in how being faithful to the comics of his religion, but not being respectful in a way.
No, I thought they did a good job.
Yeah. What was your thoughts on Nightcrawler's look?
I liked his look. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. So anyway, Nightcrawler. That's the thing about these X-Men movies is there's so much to cover.
Yeah.
Like with all the mutants, but they do a good job. So anyway, Nightcrawler. So they get Nightcrawler, and he's in a church in Boston, and then so they go. So
Professor X and Cyclops get taken out when they go see.
So Professor X and Cyclops go to Magneto. And Magneto is like going, I've had meetings with William Stryker. You remember him. And so we get a little bit of backstory that Stryker was his son was someone who was a student at Xavier School. Right. And he didn't help him the way Stryker wanted to help him.
Right.
And so I've told him, and Magneto says, I've told him all he knows. And Magneto what was your thoughts on Magneto in this one? He seemed more of like, in the first one, when we talked about the first one, he seemed like more of a Saturday morning cartoon villain. Not a cartoon villain, but just sort of the antagonist.
Right.
What was your thoughts on Magneto as, in this one, being there's more of that respectful villainy, not respectful, but
a little bit. But he also tries to kill like everyone on the planet Earth. So that's
I think it's cartoony. I think it is, but I think there is that. There's more in depth mutual respect.
Yeah.
And he's like, Charles, I've told him everything, and then the gas comes on,
right,
and then. Gas comes down and he says the war has begun, and and there was a really cool scene because we see the bubble
bridge
retract, and Xavier's trapped in there. And Magneto's kind of like, look, I don't know how I was mind controlled into this. And there was Mr. Wario, who was his security guard. And his security guard was the one that basically, made him metal, or not made him, made him do the mind control thing.
Right.
And so anyway, so they trapped Professor Xavier. They've trapped Professor Xavier. Scott has or Cyclops, who he goes with, fights off Lady Deathstrike. No,
well, not really. He gets knocked out.
Knocks out by one of the security guards.
No, Lady Deathstrike.
By Lady Deathstrike.
Yeah.
And then So meanwhile, at the school, it's night, right?
Yeah.
Is that where we're at?
Yeah.
It's night. And I like this scene because Logan comes down and he sees Iceman out, and Iceman's eating ice cream, which is, I kind of just realized that was kind of a nice wink.
Right.
And he says, you guys got any, his first thing he says, he opens the fridge and says, you guys got any beer in here? He says, this is a school. We don't sell beer. We've got some soda in the cupboard. And he gets it. And Dr. Pepper, he picks up a Dr. Pepper, which was one of their sponsors in their promotional stuff.
Gotcha.
And he says, he opens it and he pops open the lid and he starts to drink it, but then he hands it to Iceman, and Iceman just blows in it and cools it down, and it's fridged. And then he says, this is a school, and we get kind of a, because I think Iceman in the first one was such a minimal character, this one has more of expands on him, because we get to understand that he's going to a school his parents are going to school for gifted youngsters.
Yeah, the parents don't know he's a
mutant.
Right.
And he's just going to school for really that's their
just
thing,
like a normal
school. So then they talk, and as they're talking,
the
military shows up, and as the military showing up, the
start shooting kids with sleeping darts.
And
then Wolverine starts stabbing people.
Well, I liked what they did, because they show up and these kids get up, and then there's a is it a scream or?
Yeah, one of the kids sort of.
It's Siren. Siren, who in the comics, if you read the comics, is Banshee's daughter. So Siren yells, and that wakes up everybody. This gets Wolverine into action. And what'd you think of the fight scene I thought it was awesome.
No, I thought it was good. It was very visceral.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't gory, it was still
and I liked that we got to see Kitty Pryde, who is she's either 20-something years old in the first one, or she's 15 or 14 in the second and third. Because there's a scene where they show up, and they kind of use her powers as a gag.
Or she's just running away while they're trying to shoot her?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. They shoot her, and then she floats in the bed. Remember?
And then I think she has just running through the hallway.
Yeah, and that was pretty cool. Where was it? Okay, so anyway, so she's going through so that happens. A siren wakes everybody up. The guards show up. Wolverine, one of them comes into the kitchen, and Wolverine stabs. Oh, it's a great scene where he's got
stabs him into the fridge.
No, he stabs him in the fridge, but he's got a knife, and he fights him off. And there's this moment where he's like, and then whoosh, his Wolverine's blades come out, and he stabs him in the chest.
Right.
And that was a pretty cool scene. And I like how he goes, "Are you okay, Captain or Iceman?" And Iceman's like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine." And then we got to see sort of all the military showing up, and they're, like you said, they're just, shooting and stuff, and we see the kid. There's a kid that has, like, I don't know, he has the most laziest powers. He can just blink and turn the channels on the TV series. So he's the first one that gets knocked out.
Right.
And then we get an introduction to someone who he's kind of a secondary character in these X-Men movies. I don't think he showed up in the first one, but we see
Colossus?
Colossus. I was gonna build it up, but yeah, so we see Colossus kind of come out and they start shooting at him. And I think Colossus, the actor that played Colossus, was spotted by Bryan Singer at a gym.
Okay.
And got that job as Colossus.
Gotcha.
And so I like it because they start shooting at him and he just metals up. And I like how his metal stuff looks a little bit like the comics. They're more spiral.
Like sort of like bands. Yeah.
Bands, yeah. And so they start shooting him, and then Wolverine overhears it, and he does this cool flip, or like this cool, stunt where he gets on a balcony and stabs the two guys.
Yeah.
Right.
Takes off 4 people like really fast.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And then, and I liked what they did. I liked how they upped the action in this film. What I liked about it too was that. So anyway, what I liked about it too was I liked how we get to see him, like, the claws don't look more different, not practical, but but they look a lot different. It's more of an update from the first one to the second one. So they fight him off, and I like the fight. And then
they all sort of escape, and then sort of we get the sort of Wolverine and sort of his like sort of teenage gang of Iceman and Pyro. And
no. They get to you missed something. So they don't escape yet. They get to a room. They get to a hallway, and the hallway says, "Don't shoot him," and the lights are going on, and we see. He says Stryker shows up. Remember?
He does like his little monologue.
And he says, what? What? He says. What is it? Oh, I can't see. You haven't even aged a day, but me, nature. And he's like, who are you? Wolverine's like, who are you? And he's like, oh, you don't know who I am? I'm, basically, I have connections to you.
Secrets to your past.
Secrets to your past. And then what I liked is we got to talk about the ice block.
Oh, he makes the wall.
He makes the wall. So he kind of gets really close to Stryker, and then it starts to cover, and it covers in this ginormous block of ice wall.
Right.
And I liked how it was formed. It looks so cool that even Stryker touches it, and it kind of, he feels it,
Right.
And Ice, he says, blow it up, because, he just comes in, bam, bam, bam. So then he says, Logan, Rogue and Iceman say, Logan, we need to go. So they go. And then I love it. They get to the cars, and he's like going, which car should we take? And they just get in a random car. And then Pyro says, wait, I'm driving. And Wolverine's like, no, you're not driving. And he's like going, whose car is this? And then Iceman says, this is Cyclops' car. And he says, where's the keys? And of course, Wolverine opens it up, stabs it, and starts it. So as they're driving, they drive off to Boston, and he says, my parents are to live in Boston, and he says we'll go there, and they have which is a flies to the time. They do a they play Bye 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 by the NSYNC, which I thought was interesting. Anyway, so they're driving. So they drive to Boston, and they get to Iceman Bobby's house, and they kind of break into his house. Not break in, but they find this key in the rock kind of thing,
right.
and open the door. And as they're in the house, we see sort of like you can change clothes, and he gives his mom, or he lets Rogue wear his mom's gloves. So that was kind of nice to see,
right.
that she uses gloves in the film. And then as they're talking, as they're getting, kind of supplies, the car pulls up, and Bobby's family show up. Bobby's family shows up and says,
"Who are you?
Who are you?" And it's like, "Oh, this is my professor." Oh, they run into Logan, right?
Yeah, he's like just digging through their fridge.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you had a strange man dig through your fridge, it wouldn't be anything. You wouldn't feel anything, would you? And so he goes to the fridge. He's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "Logan." And they say, "We need to sit down." And I like this moment because I feel like it's a really interesting allegory of kind of, being different, coming out or something. Because there's that line where she says,
"Why don't you just not be a mutant?"
Why don't you be a mutant? And he's like, "Can't you just not be a mutant?"
Right.
And he's like, "But Mom, I've got these really great gifts." And he freezes her tea, and
right.
the cat eats the tea, which I thought was pretty cool.
And then his little brother ruins everything.
Yes. Let's talk about the little brother shows up. He calls the police because he probably I would be interesting.
I think he's just jealous.
He's just jealous.
Yeah.
And he basically calls the police. The police show up, and as the police show up, the police show up, and he's like, "Get on!" Oh, they say, the police show up, and they go, "Get on the ground!" Everybody, drop the knives, because Wolverine brings out his knives, and he says, "I can't," which I thought was a pretty cool thing.
They could retract them.
Yeah, retract them, probably. But anyway, he tells everyone to get down. The police tells everyone to get down. They don't, or they do, except for Pyro.
Well, then they shoot Wolverine in the head.
They shoot, oh, that's right. They're right. Yeah. So they shoot Wolverine in the head because they thought he was a danger because he didn't drop the knives because they're part of his skeleton. Anyway, they shot him they shoot him in the head, and I guess if you probably saw it the first time, would you thought, "Oh no, they killed Wolverine"?
No,
or were you just like,
he's a metal skeleton?
Yeah, so it doesn't make it heals. Yeah, but I mean, maybe if you were like a little kid or something,
maybe,
or be like, "Get up, Wolverine, get up." Anyway, so Pyro basically says, all the dangerous mutants out there? Well, I'm the dangerous of them all, and he takes his flame, and I like. This is where we see Pyro kind of change, because Pyro is really the character that kind of evolves.
He's the Anakin.
As the Anakin, exactly. So he says, "I'm the dangerous one of them all," and then he takes his lighter, and we finally get to see Pyro do his pyrotechnics, if you will, and he flames up all the police cars. So what did you think of that shot or that scene? What?
I guess I don't know. I guess overall, I just don't like Pyro.
Yeah,
I sort of like, and I guess in his movies, I sort of don't like.
Well,
him
he's
or
just
Bobby, or I don't know. I don't like.
I think Bobby's interesting because, I did watch an episode of the X-Men animated series,
right?
And they brought Bobby Iceman into the series, and he was in that series. Iceman kind of he didn't die and come back, but he just kind of quit the team. I think that's what happened, because he and Jubilee form a friendship, and it was sort of that you can't come back kind of thing. But I liked, so Pyro gets down and Pyro says, for all, the mutants out there, I'm the dangerous one. And he flames up everyone's car, all the police's cars.
Right.
And which kind of if you think about it from the first one, it reminded me a little bit of like the gun scene with Magneto kind of thing. I mean, that was kind of, trying to do the first movie kind of thing. But I liked he flames up and I liked how he flames up one of the cars. The car flies up and falls down. And then Rogue kind of says, "You need to stop," and she takes off her gloves and weakens him. And and I like how we get to see the weakened thing still, the veins like we talked about in the first one. And then
they hook up with Storm, and they're like, "We can't find Professor X."
And then they go to
shot down briefly by that missile, and then they're like, Magneto saves them.
No. We gotta. No. So they talk about the missile when they shoot the missile, or no. So they fly off, and Pyro, and he's like, I wonder why, and they kind of argue and bicker. And what they did with this scene is they're flying, and then there's two fighter jets, and they say, "You need to lower your car or lower your boat or not plane, lower your plane." And as they're lowering he says, "Nope." Storm, the Twister.
Oh, she makes a bunch of tornadoes.
What'd you think of that scene?
It looks really cool.
Yeah, it was I thought it was kind of a nice scene. I like how it started, and I mean, how did it's been 21 years since this movie came out. Does it hold up?
Yeah, it still looks neat.
Yeah. But yeah, I like how the Twisters go. The Twisters go, or the tornadoes go in, and she flies around them, and but then one of the missiles, or there's three missiles, two missiles. Is Jean Grey with them?
Yeah, she stops one missile.
She stops one. Right. She stops one of it. She starts one of them. The other one hits their plane. The plane goes down, and as they're going down, you think, "Oh, hope is lost," and then all of a sudden, it stops in midair.
Right.
Why could that be? Well, we find out Magneto, the master of magnetism, has stopped it, and it's in the air. And he's like going, "Oh, it's great to bring back old friends." And then they set out camp. And Magneto asks, or the X-Men ask Magneto what's going on.
Right. This is where they team up and they find out where the base is when Jean Grey reads Nightcrawler's mind.
Well, what I liked is Magneto is saying, he helped me build. I told Professor X, or I told Stryker everything. He has controls that I don't even understand, and then he goes and says the base is underneath, and he's like, Wolverine's like, "Well, I just got back from there. There's nothing there." And he's like, and you think everything is all about you, Wolverine, which I feel like is kind of now looking at it now is a pun to kind of the X-Men movies, how they're all most of them all about Wolverine, which was it's kind of interesting looking at it now 20 years later, or 21 years later. So anyway, so they say it's him, and we see Nightcrawler, and Jean Grey reads Nightcrawler's mind,
right? And
Jean Grey is like, "It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine," and she says, the base is underneath the lake, and you need to get, that's where we need to go,
right?
So they end up going there, but I do have to say, I did like the scene where Nightcrawler and Mystique have a moment. Because in the comics, and it's Nightcrawler is Mystique's son.
Okay.
So that's how they're connected, and so in the comics they're connected that way, and she fell in love with Azazel, remember in X-Men First Class, the red what's it called? The red Azazel was a red demon looking, had the same powers as Nightcrawler.
Oh, you can
teleport. So there's a scene where she says to Nightcrawler says to Mystique, he says, "Don't you like to be? Isn't it great that you can be like everyone else, talk like everyone else?" And Mystique says, "Do you think it's in this Nightcrawler's voice? Don't you think it'd be great to talk like everyone else?" And she says, "Sometimes I wish I didn't have to." So it was kind of a nice, kind of odd, if you know the comics,
gotcha,
kind of thing. So anyway, the Nightcrawler. So
go on their rescue mission.
Nightcrawler. Well, they go to the rescue mission to Alkali Lake,
right?
And we see
sort of Mystique gets her scene to shine impersonating Wolverine.
And she's like, "Stryker, I'm here." And Stryker's like, "Oh my gosh, my boy's back."
Right.
So they come down and she says, "My boy's back," and she comes down and he says, "I want you to cuff him and lead him in here." So they lead him in here, they lead Wolverine into the base,
right?
And I can't.
I think Stryker knows it's not Wolverine because he doesn't, or Mystique doesn't struggle, like, cause, he says, "I would know," like. Something like he knows Wolverine, like that's not how he acts.
Yeah.
And so then Mystique does all her cool sort of like sort of crazy.
Well, what I liked is she does flip and she takes out everybody, and then she slides, and as she slides, she gives the middle finger.
Yeah, she flips them off.
Flips them off. That's pretty awesome. And then, so I like that, and I like how Stryker's like, she could be anybody. And he just shoots a random, like,
the guy
soldier in the control room. And then, so now we're kind of in the action moment.
Yeah.
Kind of the third act action moment. And so Stryker and Logan, no, not yet. Where are we?
And then Stryker has his son sort of manipulate Professor X.
And with that, so they're creating a new Cerebro,
right?
And his son is Jason, who was a mutant that Stryker wanted to kind of wanted Professor Xavier to cure. And Xavier says, "Oh my God, Stryker, this is your son." And Stryker's like, "Look, my son is dead. He is what's left of him," because he talks about how my son, the great illusionist, how he toyed with his mind, and the fact that his wife is no longer with him is because she took a power drill to her temple,
right? Because
of all the
hated her son, and so son killed her.
Yeah, and just mentally, and then so Stryker whispers to so then
Jason's like manipulating Professor
X to be Cerebro to kill all the mutants,
right?
Kill all the mutants, and Cerebro is. And we see kill all the mutants, and all the mutants go, "Ah!" And then they
Magneto, Mystique, Jean Grey, they sort of do like their same thing they did the first one. They all sort of split off and do like their one-on-one fights. So Jean Grey fights Cyclops, Wolverine.
Okay, so Lady Deathstrike. So let's go through each one of those, and so real quick. So the first one is Jean Grey fights Cyclops. Cyclops got mind controlled, and he's shooting lasers at Jean Grey, and then
Jean Grey sort of like uses all her power to like stop the beam in midair. And she sort of see her eyes do sort of the dark Phoenix thing again. It sort of like cracks the dam.
What was your thoughts on the fight between Jean Grey and Cyclops?
I guess I don't know. I wasn't the biggest. It wasn't like
it wasn't. I think once it was like okay, it's okay. We get through it, and then kind of it was cool to see Cyclops use his beams more in this one. Then he just sort of kind of like used them in this first one. But what I did like about what I did like about it was I did like the fact that the beams I like the fight and how then he kind of changed, then he got cured or less.
So he snapped out of it.
Right. And then we get so that's the first fight, the main event, which is Lady Deathstrike, who I feel like she has more of had a cooler look in the comics. But what I liked about her in this one is she was Stryker's assistant.
Right. Well, she's just been mind controlled the whole time.
And she's been mind controlled the whole time, but she's got the black suit, and what I like is they have this really good fight, and then the fight looks pretty cool just because it was her and him fighting,
just
stabbing each other, and I like how she held him in a choking him on the beam, and she's like stabbing him, and of course he's healing, and he takes the adamantium and drains and stabs her with that.
Right.
Stabs her with it, and she starts. Her eyes start getting uncontrolled, and then all the adamantium in her body fades out.
She gets filled up with the metal and
dies. And it's a pretty cool scene. I mean, pretty cool death if you think about it. I mean, it's not a real death, but the way it looked I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah. And then her eyes changed, and we find out that she's no longer manipulated by Stryker. So then
Magneto sort of breaks into the chamber, and then reconfigures it and gets Jason Mystique gets Jason to now says
Mystique turns into Stryker and whispers to Jason, target all the humans, and she's like, all the humans, kill all of them, and then I like that look that Magneto uses. Jason looks at him kind of like, you just spoiled all my fun, and Magneto just points at his helmet.
Right.
I did like the anyway, we'll kind of talk about our thoughts more. We're just going through the plot. I mean, real quick, the plot. So anyway, Magneto goes into so he changes it up to face all the humans, and then a siren beams to all the humans. Or first it beams at all the humans, or first all the mutants?
It was the mutants, but now
it beams at all the mutants, and the mutants go, ah! And then she changes it to the humans go beam. We see the president is knocked out on the thing. Stryker, who was just running,
about to get away
from the dam, is cornered by Wolverine. Not cornered, but grabbed by Wolverine.
Right.
And he's strung up on the table, on the helicopter's wheel.
Right.
And he's like, and I like this moment because you kind of will understand it, even though it wasn't done great in X-Men Origins, is how all this kind of all this backstory will happen. He's like, you took my life away. And he's like, look, you volunteered, you volunteered. You're a survivor. You're a survivor. You need, you wouldn't be where you are without me, Wolverine.
Right.
So,
and then I think Storm and
Nightcrawler
get into the Cerebro.
Cerebro. And I liked how Storm and Nightcrawler got into Cerebro because he's like, I don't know where I'm going. But she's like, I have faith in you. And they say the Our Father. And he gets in there. And then they see a little girl. And the little girl is Jason. And she's like, who are you? She's like, he's just a little girl. And she's like, it's getting really cold in here. And it kind of, brings the coldness. I liked that scene. So the coldness, and they kind of have a face off. Both Storm and Jason's little girl image thing.
Right.
And she's like, and then once it goes away, Cyclops. So Cyclops is fighting Jean. Have we gotten there?
Yeah, we're already past that. This is where they sort of stop Jason, so then they get the professor out as the dam sort of falls apart.
And his car, his wheelchair's crushed. So they all poof into
back out of
Cerebro.
And sort of do like a scramble around trying to get out of the dam. And then Wolverine sort of leads them out.
And he has the kid in his hand, right? The kid in his arms.
The kid in the hand. And it just like one final Stryker's like, I'll get my revenge or something.
No, he's like, he says more of like, Stryker's like, you're a survivor. Are you really going to leave me? Are you really going to put your faith in the hand of Xavier? And he's like, I'll take my chances with him.
Right.
And then they fly off.
Well, then they try to fly off, but the plane's damaged, and this Jean Grey gets out of the plane and sort of uses.
And it was a pretty cool scene. Cool scene where she gets on the thing and she's like, I gotta go, and then she starts talking through Professor Xavier. It's like, this is the only way. Basically, it's like I have to sacrifice myself for the greater good. And she basically tells him to, move off or take off. And we can see Cyclops go, no, because, I'll tell you what, Cyclops in the movies, he doesn't have enough spunk like he does in the series. He doesn't whine as much as he does in the series, but
they just don't give him the screen time.
To really kind of do anything. But he says no, and he talks to Jean through Professor X, and he's like, I love you, and she's like, this is the only way, and she takes him off, and they don't have any control, and they fly off, and the river comes and knocks Jean Grey, but she'll come back as the Phoenix in X3.
Right.
And then
they fly to the president again as he's about to make a big speech about the mutants' attack.
And he says, we'll be. And then they say, look, you can do what normal. And I like what Professor Xavier says. It's like, you can do what we've all done, or you can kind of step up and and be a leader for the people. So, and it has that kind of thing, because I feel like we didn't really get that president's, really it was more about Senator Kelly in the first one saying, mutants are bad, and this one, I think he's like, changes his tune. And so he changes his tune. They go back to the Xavier school, and that's the end. Right. So, Jay, what was your thoughts watching it now?
I liked it. I think this is I'd say this one's a bit better than X1. I think both are good movies, though.
But I feel like X2, I feel like X1, but you have to look at it this way. X1 felt more like a gamble.
Yeah.
Than X2. X2, I felt like they kind of, since they had the strength, they kind of went through it. And I liked how I liked the first sequence with the Nightcrawler stuff was really good. I mean, that was probably the best scene.
The best action scene.
Best action scene. Well, and I feel like the first one didn't really have. I mean,
its action scenes were not as good as
the second one exactly. And like, I liked Pyro and kind of Pyro going to the villain,
the dark side.
But I like how he says, you're a man among insects. Don't tell. When he's talking to Magneto, there's that.
Well, they didn't say anything. So I liked Mystique sort of, because she sort of seems like, sort of like Magneto says that to like everyone. Probably.
Yeah,
yeah.
I didn't notice that when I saw it the first time. I don't think.
Okay.
But I liked this one. I liked the I felt like it was better. I thought it did better than I expected. I think they kind of knew what they were doing in this one.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the first one was more of them trying to get better, or trying to have to kind of like, oh, this is what X-Men is. This is what X-Men is. This is what X-Men is.
I felt like the first one had their powers a bit more grounded, and this one they really... I don't know if they
stood
too far. They had Professor X sort of freezing like the whole museum,
which I think he can do in the comics.
Right? Yeah. They sort of just amped from doing like sort of like a more low power to like amping up the powers.
Yeah, they kind of cranked it up, and then
Magneto's like floating around destroying.
I kind of wish we saw him in the ball, like in the magnetic ball kind of thing. Right. But I did like the scene where, I mean, the Nightcrawler scene is the best. It's probably the best kind of really action scene in the film. Or I think it, or it's the scene that when you think of X2, you think of when people mention X2, you think of that scene.
Gotcha.
This one I liked the. I thought Brian Cox was a really good villain. I mean. And I liked Lady Deathstrike, and I mean, they didn't, I felt like in the first one, they gave even the villains more depth. Because if you look at Toad and Sabretooth, they were just sort of like throwaway thugs, which is kind of sad. Which is kind of sad with Wolverine and Sabretooth. I mean, there's more depth to it in X-Men Origins Wolverine, but yeah, I mean, I like this one. I like the I feel like they did a better job with the school. I like that we saw like younger mutants. Like that was the other thing I saw with the first one. It was like the school for gifted youngsters in the first one, and we get to see bits and pieces, but this one we get to see sort of them, walk through walls.
Siren and Kitty Pryde.
Kitty Pryde and Colossus and Colossus, especially the I think I think Bobby does they amp that Bobby a lot, or Iceman a lot more.
I'm still, I guess, Bobby and the Flame Pyro, they're just not my favorite. They're more like team drama.
Who's your favorite? Yeah, I mean, I think they but it wasn't like, it didn't hammer it in like One Tree Hill or. Yeah. I mean, it could have been worse.
It could have been worse.
Yes. So, Jay, since we've talked for probably more than
like an hour.
For an hour, what was your if you would have looked at X-Men 1 and X-Men 2, not on a ranking, but let's say report card between the first two X-Men's. A+ says, this is the greatest film ever. B+ or A, it was just A, B, C kind of. Was it A, B, C, D, F? F, forget it. D, we could get in the director's chair and change it up. C, decent.
Yeah.
B, below amazing.
Okay.
A, amazing.
Gotcha.
What would you give X2?
I'd either do like a B for X1 and B+ for X2, or maybe a B+ for X1 and an A for X2.
So I would probably give. I think I would give X2. I would say an A+, like A+. I would give X1 probably an A, because I feel like
Yeah.
X2. But I also feel like they took more chances in X2, or not chances,
I
but
say, like they're close.
the
But
comics,
X2's a bit better.
well, I think the comic, I think, but you also have to look at it this way. At the time, you had Blade, X-Men were really the only two kind of dogs in town, and they kind of. I mean, X2 is one of those movies that I feel like it amplified what we saw for a comic book film with X-Men. Bryan Singer did a great job with, I think, just balancing it out was a lot. It was a lot more stronger, and it wasn't just so black and white.
Right.
So I give it A+ as well. So anyway, that is our look at the X-Men 1 and X-Men 2. Check this out. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe. If there's anything you want us to cover, let us know. Jay, what would you want to cover next time? Or are we going to just play it by ear?
I don't know. We'll play it by ear, but eventually we got to get to John Wick 4 when we have time to watch.
John Wick 4, yes. So maybe when the Continental... Is the Continental out?
Are they making another one?
No, it's like a TV series about the hotel. I know they're making a 5th one, but...
They need to slow down. They're making too much stuff.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm Steve.
I'm Jay.
And see you at the movies. Bye.